Chapter 5. So simple functions. So we talked a lot about basic keywords and syntax thing. Let's just jump into functions. So we seen by default functions in Python by far. So print input. So we haven't seen input yet. So it's basically to like get in or get in statement in C++, I guess. So format we have seen it. No, format we haven't seen it. So this is always used in association with print. We will see that. So it is basically to manipulate the way the print works. So format is always used along with print to make the output more visually appealing. So float in length string type, you might be seeing it. Absolute maximum minimum power round, these are some of the mathematical operations. So let's move on. The function, it's a name, it has a name, of course. It might need a parameter if you want to pass any, and it can return a value if you need any. So float of 23, where float is the function, 23 is the value that you are passing, and it returns something, right? So it returns 23.0, so it returns a return type, so it has all the three. So, okay, so this is a basic way of saying things. A function is called or executed. A parameter is passed to a function. So when they say something like this, parameter can be passed, a function can't be passed. A function is called or executed. It's just the way of speaking. Uh, so like the variable, this also highly recommended a function name. Don't play with underscores. It cannot be a keyword. It cannot start with a digit. So it is case sensitive. So be aware of it. The parameters we talked about it, the value that we are passing. So print doesn't have zero arguments for now. It has one argument. Power has two arguments, so six arguments. Print can have like zero or a number of arguments. Also, one thing to note down is print doesn't return anything. Print returns nothing. It's like a null operation. Yeah, it's like a null value. So how can I put this? Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. So assigning x. Okay, see, it returns none data type. So that's what I'm trying to say. So print by necessarily doesn't return anything. So it displays, it's the way that print works. So you can see the display. It doesn't mean that it will return the value of what is being displayed. So if you pass the output of the print to a variable and try to print it, you will always get a none. So make sure it's one of the catch that I got from the class that I got into. So that's something to be aware of. There are ways to write functions too, so that we can do. Yeah, this is a thing that I showed you how to play with. So don't play with it. Pause by value means the change the value. Okay, yeah. So whatever we tried in print statement by far, it's passed by value. So if I'm assigning 5 to x and if I'm passing x, I'm not actually taking the value that is assigned in x and literally moving it to some other variable, right? So it is passed by value. So I'm not changing the variable itself. So you might be seen it, but let me show it once. So if I'm passing 5 and I'm assigning y equals to 5. So at this point, I haven't changed the value in x. So I'm just passing it by value, not by the variable. I'm not reassigning the entire variable to y. So I just passing 5 from x and I am assigning it to y. That's what they're trying to say. So yep, in Strat4 we have seen that, and yeah, this is wrong. So order of parameter passing is also very important. 2 to the power 3 is not equals as 3 to the power 2. By the way, equals is like checking, uh, you know, uh, the output will be like binary output, whether it will be a true or false. Equals equality checking, I guess. I'm not sure about the proper word for it. So equals and not equals, if you put a semicolon after this, it will be a not equals. Any questions? Okay, so some functions, of course, returns a value. We seen int returns a value and print doesn't. So that should be some functions to return nothing in the string at all, not return for nothing. Yeah, that is the thing that I'm talking about. Print. This print doesn't return anything. Just make sure that you are not passing the output of print to something else. It won't work. So this is something to play with. You can try it. This is something very interesting. So I'm trying to convert string with a which looks like a float to an int, which you can't represent 2.5 in integer because it has a mantis part. So you can represent an integer in float, which is possible 2.0. You can't represent 2.5 in integer, which will looks like a truncate option, right? So it won't do it for you. So as long as it is not equivalent, it won't do. So keep this in mind. So yeah. So there we talked about input, right? So basically it will ask for what value wants to input, and if you just pass it to a variable, you can actually call it and you can print it out. So we haven't tried it yet. So when we jump into programming, we can take a look at how input works. Forget about that, we are not going to see that. So we can try this one. So basically I'm trying to ask for an integer input, and if I'm not passing an integer, I have to call the in function. No. Let me clear this out. Input receives input in terms of string, right? So I knew that input function works like that. So even if I'm passing 5, I have to convert it into an integer before passing it to x, because I don't want a string as x. I want integer in x, so I have to convert whatever I'm feeding the integer in the input statement. I will convert it to int, then I pass it to x. So let me just run this one, get what I'm talking about. So cost the 5, this cost the 6, and yeah, voila, it's 11. So if I don't have this int operation in before, so it will be treated as a string, and this of course would break. The x plus y would break for sure. I have to save this to run it. So let me pass 5, let me pass 6. uh, it is a string concatenation, so it's basically having 5 and 6 together and it's just outputting it. So that would be it. Yeah, another useful operation in print is, so let me show you how it looks like, then you will have a better idea of what it is for. So yeah, this is what to be inserted in the separation between the parameters. So between the separations I want a small x, so that's what it is. And there is another useful thing called end. So every print statement will be printed in a new line. So let me try to change that. Okay, so this is the output if you can't see it. So I'm adding x and then x at the end, and I am getting rid of the new line and I'm printing the y in the same line. You got my point, right? So this should be printed in a separate line and this should be printed in a separate line. So I'm using the end operator to just get rid of that new line code. I mean the slash n, if you're familiar with what it purpose is, and I'm just getting rid of that going to a new line. So given the fact, how many number of lines do you think this one will use? Any idea? Okay, let me try that. It's two. So hope you got a good understanding of what the separator and the end operator is. So hello world separator. So this one basically is adding a space between hello and world, and at the end it is just getting rid of the new line and the goodbye will be printed on the same line. So right now it might not make much sense like why we are needing this, but when it comes to data science, this has like a huge advantage of, you know, passing arguments around. So format, like I said, format is used along with print statement. This has a major role in formatting or making the visual output more appealing. So let me show you what it looks like and how to use it. So basically you have to use within a print statement, and let me just write it, you know. uh, so I want uh, so take a look at it. This is the string that I'm going to print. I'm using dot format to represent what value should be passed between the flower brackets, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. I want hello world dot goodbye. So that's what I'm trying to print. So let's see, hello world dot goodbye. So that's what it is. So whatever that is represented within the format argument, and it will go to the corresponding flower brackets. uh, Imagine that if you can use it along with things like, you know, not this one. There is a good example of what is the best way of using format is. So you can use a shift operation along with, you know, data type operation. The format will be very powerful. Let me show you that example. uh, yeah, this is some way of representing it. So I want to represent it like what is 1 divided by 2 looks like. So this will be the output for it. So yeah, this is the one I'm talking about. So imagine if you can combine with data type and a shift operation. So print will looks, you know, very, I mean the format of operator will looks very useful. So this is what, let me tell you what it means. So I am trying to tell the function that I am passing down 1, and colon f represents, consider this as a float, and divided it by 2, which is also considered as float, and this is also considered as float. The reason I'm passing float for 1 is that if any value in a mathematical operation is represented in float, the output will be float, even if it is not like a float. Like let's say 1.0 divided by 1, the output will be 1.0, because one variable is represented in float, right? So the output will definitely be the float. So that's what here they are trying to say. So yep, even if I represented like, no, now I can't change it within, but if you represent like 1, I mean 10 divided by 5, if the 10 is represented in float, which is 10.00 by default, and divided by 5, it will be like 2.0. So it won't be 2. Yeah, this is the 54 thing that I'm talking about. So if you want to represent 1 by 3, so all you have, you can represent it until for 54 bits after the man disappeared. So yeah, see how they are representing 1 by 10. So this is how it will goes. Yeah, this is the thing that I'm talking about the format statement, I mean format operation. So if you combine this with precision, alignment, and number type, format is much useful. So the bracket represents which position the output looks like. It might not be visually easy to represent. Let me open a notepad. So this uh, thing represents align it to left. So if I want to represent, so okay, if I'm representing that less than 5, which means the 5 positions, and it should be aligned to left. So how I put this? So help will be at the leftmost value possible, and world will be at the center, since it is like cat symbol. So this represent be at the center, and this right thing represent be at the rightmost thing possible. So and the space is defined by the value that you are feeding in. So that's the purpose of using precision alignment and number type in a combined fashion. uh, Yeah, the period represents I'm passing down a float and I'm representing the digits that needs to be represented for the float. So the point represents how many digits I have to represent for the float I'm passing in. So yeah, of course, if you want to use a built-in function, you can basically call the library that is holding that function, and you can just use it. So that's plenty of examples for that. So someone will already have the function that you are trying to build up. So just Google it before trying to build everything by yourself and use that particular library and call the function by default. So don't write everything on your own. That's what the author is trying to say. Like exponential log, log 10, square root. There are plenty of options available. So just make use of it. Seed is something I need to highlight because we will using in data science. In order to be precise, you will use it in machine learning. So imagine that if you, since you are not familiar with machine learning, I can't explicitly tell why is it needed, but keep that in mind. We will come back to the seed thing later. Random is also used in data science often, so I just want to highlight it there.